Hi there, folks. Al here at A&H HQ, joining you for another live Q&A session. And this week, it might be a fairly short session, but I'm going to talk to you about setting up effects pedals. Going to focus on two in particular, and going to focus on setting them up 100% wet. Let me just show you the setup here that I've got. 96 and two Boss pedals, DD7 and the RV6, a couple of great little external effects pedals, which we see used quite a lot by DJs amongst a myriad of others. And we get a reasonable amount of questions about how best to set them up and different ways of using them. So I thought we'd talk about that today. If you have any questions as the session progresses, please pop them in the comments so I can answer them for you. We'll make the video available online after the session, so you can carry on asking questions. And hopefully this will be informative for you. Give you a bit more overview about the topic. So with effects pedals and wet and dry mixing, our mixers obviously use a send and return system for our effects in the main, certainly the 96, the 92, PX5. And the difference between using a send and return system with effects pedals is that effects pedals typically used for guitars or designed for guitars, where the output of the instrument goes straight into the pedal, and then the output of the pedal goes into the amplifier. So what you have going through to the amplifier is a combination of the instrument and the effect together. With the send and return system on a mixer, the instrument audio, your music tracks, is already in the mix. If I show you this whilst I'm speaking, you can see here I've got a signal here on this track channel. So that's always there in the mix once I turn that up. I've just got a little snare going for illustrative purposes. That be my music in the mix, and a send from the sends up here on the 96 out to my pedals, and they come back from the pedals through into these return channels. Now what I want on the returns is 100% wet output from the pedals, and what I mean by that is just the effect output. The reason why I only want the wet output from the pedals when DJing really is to avoid inadvertent boost in the signal level. If I send both the mix level to the pedal and bring that signal back from the pedal together with the effect, what it'll do is it will add level of the dry signal twice. So you could get maybe 360 dB boosts in your mix inadvertently. The other thing that you might encounter would be some phasing issues if you've got the dry content from the audio coming back into another channel, and if I assign this channel to the filters, the dry content, the same signal coming back in the return, isn't in the filter. You'll start to get some phasing perhaps, or what we see people asking us questions about is it doesn't sound quite right, or we say people tend to use the term phasey, because what you're hearing is perhaps a difference in the EQ from the track that you're mixing and the spectrum of the signal coming back. So I want to show you with these two pedals how to set up 100% wet outputs so you can use them with our mixers. Talk about wet and dry. For those of you who aren't familiar, the wet refers to the amount of processing applied to a source signal. Dry is the unprocessed signal. Wet is the processed audio. And the use of the terms relates to traditional studio multi-track recording practices. Wet, typically reverbs or echoes, using hardware. And the dry sound, the term dry just refers to the kind of dead sound or the direct sound of the instrument that you're recording. Typically, we'd be recording it in a acoustically treated room, so it's a very dry sound. It's just the sound of the instrument that you want to capture when you're recording. So when you want to add an effect to that, your reverb or delay in this instance, the return signal back into the mix from the effects device wants to be set 100% wet. The problem, if you want to call it that, for the sake of this discussion, with effects pedals, and these two in particular, is that they don't feature a wet or a dry control. And these two, as the examples, offer different ways of getting the output from the pedals, depending on how you plug them up. So we're just going to show you today how to plug these up so that what you get out of them is the 100% wet output. There's a couple of other ways of doing it, and perhaps we'll talk about that a little bit later. Different pedals, different hardware, different I/O, and a dry and wet control. But what I'll do is I'm just going to show you a short video clip that shows you how to plug up these two pedals that I've got here, the DD7 and the RV6. You can see here how I've got them plugged in the back, but I'm going to just show you a video that will walk you through these. I'm going to start with the DD7 pedal. So sorry about that. Just turn myself off. Start this video for you. What you can see is plug from the Send 2, you can use the Send 1, into input B on this pedal. And that's quite important. Input B you need to plug into on a DD7 if you want to get the wet only output. Plug from the input B and then output A. Output A is going back to my corresponding return. So because I'm going from Send 2, I'm returning to return B. You can use the other returns if you wanted to. You can use Send 1 and return A. You can use Send 2 and return to C or D if you like as well. But for the purposes of this and the demonstration and typical use with these two effects pedals, we use the two return channels that have got the semi-parametric and the fader control over them as well. So Send 2 and return B I'm using on this example. Set the input to return and turn up the effects pedal. On the DD7 you want to be about 3 o'clock. That would give you what equates to unity through the pedal if you have the dry signal as well, but it gives you a good healthy level coming out of the pedal as well. Then adjust your input and your send controls on the mixer so that you've got them operating around about unity with your channel signal. Then you use your fader and the send control, to adjust the mix balance. So if I show you here now in practice, or at the back, my Send 2 in this case, and my return B are going to the boss here. So I'll be using Send 2 to return back to this channel here. Now I've already set this one up for unity, so I'll just give you a short demonstration so you can hear it. Hopefully you can hear that okay as a dry signal. You can see it in the meters there on its own. As I add the send, and I use the send as a dynamic control there. If I turn the feedback up perhaps a little bit on the delay, slow it down a little so it's a little bit more apparent. All that I've got coming back into this channel is the wet delay output. Means that I can filter the track or filter the return or EQ the return separately without adding any extra amplitude into the mix inadvertently, without, as I say, causing those kind of phasey issues that they talk about. And the reason why I am not plugging in to both channels, coming out of both channels, as I say, is so that I only get that wet output. And that's the only way on this pedal that you can set this up for a wet output. The setup for the V6 is a little bit different. And through set that one up as well. So yeah, you my other screen. You can see I've already got that one plugged in. And on this one, I'm using send 1 connecting to the RV6. Again, input B it goes into on the pedal there. If I don't go into input B, I'm not going to get the wet only output. Again, with this pedal, it's the only way to set this up to get 100% wet output and no direct signal. The difference with the RV6 is that the output I can connect in stereo. So I connect the A and B back to my returns. And again, I'm using the 1-for-1, send 1, return A, back into the left and right on there, setting the channel to return A. Again, pedal, around about 3 o'clock, a little bit higher perhaps. Adjusting the channel input gain and the send control to get unity between my dry music signal and the return signal that I want to put back to the mix. Now, once I've done that, typically speaking for effects, you would set your sends post fade, as you can see there, so that as you change your mix level on your faders, the return level is relative to that. I can see some questions coming in that aren't about this. Sorry, the source actually is relevant, so bear with me. I'll just show you the end of this. Sends to the effects, and then the fader to balance that in the mix with your audio track. We'll make these videos available to you as a separate online resource, so you can have a look at those. We'll annotate them for you and give you some more examples for the different mixers. Before I go on, as there's a question in, are we going to make an update to Xone 24 to update the AG23? Can't stand it. Has a 50-50 dry with a toggle for the effects loop. Needs a wet dry send like the 43. It's a good question, and it's one of the points I am going to cover in this. We understand what you're saying. We understand why you're asking, and I can show you this currently for the 23 is how DD7 I would suggest you set it up. Again, where you don't have a dry or wet control and we don't have a send return on the 23, send from the, let me show you on screen, send from the left effects loop send into input B on the DD7 to give you that 100% wet output from A. And for this one, you want to use a Y splitter cable. So that would be a mono TS jack to 2 RCA cables. If I show you, I've actually got one here, so you can see what I mean. This is the sort of cable that you want to use with a 23C. It's got a mono jack on one end to plug into the output A of the effects pedal, and then on the other end 2 RCAs. So that splits that one signal into 2, so I can plug in to left and right on the 23C there. The 23C differs from the 9.2, the 9.6 and the PX. Those will enable you with a single left-hand input to route that audio back to the left and right mix. 23C doesn't implement that. And the question from the source is a good one. Again, I think I've covered it before. Not really here to discuss new product launches at the moment. But when we are, know that we're taking on board the questions that you're asking in these sessions. And hopefully when the new products come out, you'll be pleased with the developments that we're making. Samuel Culp, are digital mixers better than using analog mixers? It's kind of not really relevant to this discussion. I would say it's a difficult question to give you a yes or no answer to. I don't think there's better. I think they are different. We're very happy with our analog mixers, and the differences of those are probably something for a different discussion. The DD8, looking for a good pedal. I believe so. As far as the DD8 goes, it's a stereo in, stereo out. You would possibly need to consult the Boss user guides for that. What I do know is that their RE2, their little new Echo tape delay emulation, actually includes a wet only output option as a setup. So you plug it in a certain way. You can set whether you have a wet or dry output, or wet and dry output, when you first plug that pedal up. And it's an interesting topic actually, because there are myriad ways and different pedals for doing it. You do need to consult the user guides of the hardware you're using. I mean, just as an example, some others that I've got here, the H9 is another very popular pedal that people use for DJ effects. That's got a push and hold option through the menu. So you push the one of the pedals and one of the buttons, it opens up the menu, you scroll through the menu, and it will enable you to kill dry, is how they call that. This old another old Boss, but it's a half rack, quite a popular effects unit. This has different options on the rear panel. So if I can show you that, let's see if you can see that on the camera. Okay, on here, the outputs here give me mix and delay. So if I was using this with a 9.6 or the 9.2 or the PX5, I would come out of the delay output only. So that's 100% wet output there. This one, the mix, as it suggests, it gives me the dry and the wet signal output. This other pedal I've got here, you might see me use that one before, the little Nux tape core, cracking little pedal for not a lot of budget. That has a different option, and I think I can show you that one as well. For this one, you see what I've done with it. Here it is. Bring it to you on my other screen. This one, you can see here, it plugs into a computer to give you some extra options for setting it up and presets and stuff. And here, it's on the little computer-based app with a kill dry switch. So if I'm using that one with my 9.6, I set up that kill dry option on the app, and then that's a preset basis here. That pedal will remember that until I change it again. it is something you need to kind of look at in the user guides of the hardware. The reason we wanted to look at the DD7 and the R6 is because they are very popular amongst our users and the DJ community in general. Noonie, how do you control the wet and dry? That's part of the point of the discussion here, is there's no way to control the wet and dry on the pedals themselves. So setting them up as we've shown. Again, I can perhaps give you a illustration as well to help clarify this, and you can pause this session another time and refer back to it. Is on the delay pedal, to get the wet only output into B, out from A. And then what I would be doing to control the wet and dry is I would be using the channels on the mixer. So that's my dry signal. If I send some of the dry signal, you can see that coming in on the return. You can probably hear that as well, I think. So that's my dry mix. That's my wet and dry mix. And then the wet and dry balance is, as I say, it's a question of how you would balance your audio in the mix between adjusting the levels of those faders there. I hope that makes sense. Can we explain the aux sends on the Model 1? They work in a very similar way, actually, as the 9.6 or the 9.2. I can show you with the 9.2 an illustrated example for a pedal like this. They are stereo send and return systems. Same applies for the Play Differently hardware. So if you're using a DD7, you would connect from the left on your aux send to input B on the DD7, the Boss BD range, I think this applies to. Perhaps somebody from Boss will tell us if that's not the case. And then return from the output A into left M on the mixer. The reason why you go in left M is that's normaled to left and right in the mix bus, so you don't need to worry about it only coming out of one speaker. If you do want to have a stereo input, you can hook it up something like this. So again, going into the input B to give you the wet only output. But if you connect up to the left and the right, sorry, the A and the B on the pedal, and connect into the left and the right, what you'll get is a ping pong delay on that. There may still be a little bit of dry content in there, but you're not going to notice it in the same way if you go stereo in, stereo out of one of these. As I said, the RV6, the delay, that has a stereo output. So you can go mono in, you will get a stereo spread on the output. We wouldn't be too concerned about sending just a left signal into an effect pedal. Typically for delays and the way that you'd mix reverbs onto a track, the stereo image isn't perhaps so important. And possibly fair to say, if the stereo image is something that's very important to you, and your delays want to be in stereo, and your mix audio is stereo, and that image is important to you, consider a different pedal, one that does support a wet and dry mix, or a stereo input output with the kill dry send. Say the other three that I've shown you there will all enable that. Can effects use it be better than using a pedal? Samuel, that's probably where I've just referred to. If you have particular preferences for how you want the effects unit to work, you might find a rack or a dedicated hardware that offers you that wet and dry control is something you can use. Obviously, if you've got a 9.6 PX5, even a 23C, you can implement some VST effects, and then generally you find a way of having some wet and dry control within the software. So this session is particularly to show you the DD7 and RV6. We see those commonly now this year and over the last few years adopted by DJs. There's no reason why you shouldn't use them. Let's say setting them up like this, the way that we're showing you here, they're still going to sound great. And if you do want to set them up stereo in, stereo out, by all means, these aren't hard and fast rules. Just be aware that the output of the effects pedal coming back into your mix will include that dry signal. So it will add some amplitude to the mix, 3 dB, maybe 6, depends how you have stuff EQ'd. And as well, if you start switching in the filters onto your channels here. So if I assign a filter on this one and add the dry signal coming back in here as well, as soon as I start moving the filter on my dry mix channel, the dry content that's coming back through this one won't be going through the filter. Again, some of that could be subjective. You might want to set it up like that, and we're not here to tell you how to do stuff. We're here to just show you what we think is the best way of setting these particular pedals up to avoid any of those kind of head scratchy moments. The 23C one, again, I will just go back to, because that perhaps is a case in point. This is the way to set this pedal up on that mixer. There is one exception. Hello, Aldo. Nice to see you. You're not willing to sacrifice having the VCF filter from A&H. Set it up like this, then the source, and you should be all good. You can use the filters on the effect return as well. 2-channel mix like the PX5. Okay, thanks very much for your feedback on the features. If your wet dry is affected by the fader, doesn't that alter the amplitude? So dip when you want to just say 20% of wet dry. Again, you could do it like that, but typically speaking, with the effects unit, sorry, this is TB UK replying to you. If your wet dry is affected by the fader, doesn't that alter the amplitude? It does, but typically speaking, what you would want is the level of your mix track here. If I give you that, excuse me that it is just a snare drum. If I use the reverb on this example, you can see here coming back in here, I've got some reverb coming back. What you really want in the mix, typically, is a balance between the dry signal and the effects return. So I can drown out the track with the reverb if I do this, so I might set that fader lower. If I return the dry signal into this channel as well, this fader will adjust the amplitude of the affected signal, so the reverb, as well as the dry signal summed with it. So you're always going to have an increase in the dry signal if you return it to this channel. So if you turn the fader down, TB, you would be dipping it, but you'd be dipping the dry and the wet. If you set it up this way, 100% wet, the output from the effect pedal is separate on the level from the dry. It's how we would suggest it's the hassle-free optimum way of doing it. If you're using the 23C, where you don't have the fader control on the returns or the sends, you will get that sort of jump in audio. If you're using the 43C, that would be an exception, because the effects send will give you a reduction in the dry signal as you turn it up. So if you're familiar with that mixer, and we'll show you a video for that, by all means, with these two pedals, plug into A and B and out from A and B into left right with your effects loop. As you turn up the channel X effects control, what that mixer does is it reduces the amplitude of the mix channel signal to compensate for what's coming back from your effects unit. So it will kind of do that job for you. They're all a little bit different, the mixers. They're designed for sort of different DJs and different styles of applications. So we figured it's possibly helpful to kind of show you this and demonstrate it. What I'll do is perhaps go back and show you a couple of the other examples. Let me take that snare out there. The PX5 is an interesting case in point. If you're using the reverb on the PX5, again, the RV6 come out in mono into input B to give you that wet only output, and with the RV6 the wet output is available on left and right. If it were the DD7 and you had it plugged up like this, you would have a ping pong delay coming back into the external return. You can also set up the PX5 in through the line A aux channel, give yourself a little bit of EQ, and or pass it through the filter. If you wanted to add it to the effects chain for the internal effects as well, you could connect that up like that. If you want to use the DD7, return it in mono through the left M on the PX5, and you will still have that content in the left and right side of the mix. I show you the other ones we've got here, the 92. I think I briefly touched on that. We can make these images and some more videos available to you online. We'll annotate the videos, so hopefully the instructions are quite clear. But on the 92, for the delay, mono out, input A, and stereo out, or A and B output. That gives you your ping pong effect. And the reverb will give you a stereo field on the output, connecting in the same way. The wet only is mono in, output A out, mono out, but that will give you a left-right wet signal. We do have some pictures. Hopefully, if I show you the pictures, and remember to share my screen, thank you, Keith. Show you some pictures of those. 23C connecting to the DD7, left out into B, output A into a Y splitter cable, returning to both of those. Assign the filter on the channel, and that will give you left and right output of the delay 100% wet. PX5, left out on a reverb into input B, output A and B. It's a stereo output on the PX5. Stereo output on the RV6. You can set that one up to the aux channel, similar way, output into line. So you can add that to the filter on the PX5, or you can chain in the internal effects. The 9.2 to show you the illustration of that. With the delay, with the DD7, left out to input A will give you a ping pong output into left right. So your delay swaps between the left and right as it tails off. And then if you want the reverb, same way, left out, input B will give you a stereo spread on that pedal as your input back to the return channel. The wet only output for the 92, again as I've shown you here on the 9.6, left out to input B, output A into your left M return, and that will be in the left and right in the mix. Same setup essentially as I'm showing you here. Hopefully you can see that. If I pop that one out a sec, send 1 is going into return B just on one side. If I pop that one out, you can see send 2 there. is also coming out of the left into the reverb here, out both sides on the reverb, into the left-right returns. So I'm using send 1 to return A there, and send 2 to return B. You can use the C's and D's, as I've said, if you don't want to be able to EQ your effects returns or filter them. Add some more effects through the other send. By all means, return them into C or D. One other point to note on your returns is to just ensure that your corresponding send on that channel is kept down. So if I show you, let me do this with the delay, which is post fade. So I want to turn that up in the mix. I'll turn that one down. Let him tail off. If I bring in avoid turning that one up, also I'll get a feedback loop, but what I can do is add some reverb onto that one. So you can hear that's the reverb just on the delay itself. Again, this would be one of the reasons why you might just want the wet only output on there, so that if you start adding effects in chain through the return system, you don't add dry signal inadvertently, just a little bit more amplitude into that mix bus. Give yourself plenty of headroom. Means that the channels that you're mixing and EQing are kind of discrete from one another, so that the sum that you get in the mix will be nice and clear, the source audio and the effect. They'll sum together nicely in the mix, and you won't just be kind of accumulating the dry signal. Another question there, let me turn that down a sec for you. Cables TRS or TS? For these ones, for the mono pedals, use a TS, mono cables. Again, it may depend on the hardware that you're using, but typically speaking, for guitar pedals, you would expect them to be unbalanced. Just bear in mind that it's essentially their pedals, they're guitar pedals, and they're typically designed to plug out from a guitar, which is a mono jack, into the pedal, out of the pedal, into the amp. And if you're plugging into a guitar amp, no doubt some guitarists will correct me on this, but the output of a guitar is a mono jack. So you can possibly with some of them use TRS cables, but for safety's sake and ease of use, hassle-free use, if you've got mono pedals or guitar pedals, typically speaking, TS mono cables to connect with. Again, consult the hardware guides. Some of these pedals now, the designers are becoming aware that the hardware is used for DJ mixers and in different types of scenario. You know, not a lot of the knob twiddlers, the Euro rack guys use effects pedals, and the IO there on your Euro rack, I think typically it's unbalanced, but again, it's a bit of a mix and match scenario there. So these aren't hard and fast rules. By all means, you're welcome to experiment a little bit. You're welcome to try some different stuff out. We just wanted to show you a way with these two pedals in particular, the best way that we think to set up with these mixers. As I said, we'll make the images that I've shared the videos that I showed you briefly for the 9.6 setup. We'll do versions of those for all of our current mixers, and we'll annotate those, make them available online for you as well, so you don't need to scroll backwards and forwards through this session. Timmy 101, you're using the 96. That's fine. Again, the setup here that I've got is the 96 and these pedals, and I'm using the mono cables. It's fine to use the unbalanced cables with this type of setup. If you're using good quality cables like we've got here from B+, noise, it's not really going to be an issue, which is typically why you'd have the balanced options if you've got long cable runs, or you do think noise might be an issue in the setup. But with a guitar pedal, and again, if you're setting it up for the 100% wet output, that kind of common mode rejection that the balanced cables deal with doesn't apply in this scenario. So guitar pedals, mono cables, external hardware, rack hardware, and stuff like that. See what it says in the user guide there. As I say, I've got a myriad of different ones. I think the Eventide, we could possibly have some balanced outputs on. It depends on the cost quite often of that equipment. So dedicated rack hardware that's designed for studios typically would be balanced. And where you have got that balanced option, of course, use the TRS connectors, what some DJs might, or what you might refer to as the stereo ones. They look like that, so you can see the little tip, ring, and sleeve separated. Used in this scenario, that's a balanced cable. Any more questions, guys? I think we'll try and keep this one short and sweet today. Pop them in the YouTube video comments, and we'll keep an eye on them over the coming weeks. Get back to you with any queries. On the site, TB UK, we plan to do that. As I say, the images that I've shown and shared with you here, we will pick those up as a knowledge base article on our website. The little videos that I showed earlier, we're going to annotate those for you, and those are nice short little clips, about a minute long, so you can have a look at those. We will put those up online as soon as we can. Give us a little bit of time, because after this session we'll be prepping for AEE. So anybody out there who wants to come and say hi, we'll have a lounge in the lab next month over in Amsterdam. It'd be great to talk to any of you guys. We can show you the setups. The stuff we're talking about here is the sort of stuff we'll be able to demonstrate in real life. It would be great to talk to some people, not through a screen as well. But in the meantime, we'll put those up online. We'll make the resources available to you, and keep your questions coming in. Please feel welcome to ask us questions outside of this topic, and we will use those to inform our next sessions. We take on board all the stuff you send to us in support, the feedback we get from the field. The more you ask of us, and the more you ask us questions, the more we can do to reply to you and give you the answers you want. So I hope that's helped you out. If there's anything you want clarifying, as I say, pop it in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you in a month's time. I think next month. I know I've had a lot of questions still coming in about tractor setup and routing, so I'm going to revisit that. Possibly we'll follow that with some Ableton Live. We know a lot of you guys are using Live and still asking us questions about the USB routing in and out and sends and stuff like that. So next month's session we'll be revisiting Tractor with our mixers. Following that, we'll look at Live. And as I say, ask us the questions. We know then what to answer you. I hope that's helped, folks, and take care.